The story begins with a quick recap by Gwen Stacy of how Miles Morales became Spider-Man. She claims that she didn't want to hurt Miles, but she did. She was so deep in her thoughts that she didn't realize the song already ended while she kept playing the drums. Her bandmates got worried and wanted to check if she was okay, but Gwen refused to talk to them. She walked out furious when they started asking questions. In her line of work as the Spider-Woman, she realized that she was always alone until she met Miles and discovered that she wasn't the only one. Before she met Miles, Gwen was best friends with Peter Parker. Parker has already been working part-time for the Daily Bugle and has been covering a story of the Spider-Woman. At school, Peter has been a target of bullying by Ned Leeds. Tired from the bullying, Peter acquired a serum that turned him into the Lizard. Gwen appeared hoping to find Peter at the prom, but he showed up as the Lizard, rampaging at school. Gwen tried stopping him, but he died after the fight, which she discovered was Peter. Peter claims he wanted to be unique, like Gwen, suggesting he knew about her secret identity. As she mourns the loss of her best friend, Captain George Stacy finds Spider-Woman on Peter's corpse and assumes she killed him. He led the extensive manhunt for Spider-Woman, determined to bring her to justice. When she gets home, her father informs her that they have just caught a break in the Spider-Woman case and are close to catching her. Later, her father was called into work after a report just came in about Vulture breaking into Guggenheim Museum. Gwen immediately suited up and hurried to the scene. Spider-Woman finds Vulture, but quite not what she expected him to be. She suspects that this Vulture is from an alternate dimension. Vulture pinned her down against the wall. When he's about to deliver the final blow, a portal opens and a masked assailant saves her. He introduces himself as Miguel O'Hara from another dimension. He explains that he leads an elite strike force dedicated to the security of the multiverse. Miguel claims that thanks to Kingpin's collider, his team had to clean up the mess, which made a hole wide enough for guys like the Vulture to get shot into the wrong dimension randomly. They had to put everybody back where they belonged before time and space collapsed. When Miguel and Gwen struggled to handle Vulture by themselves, he calls in for backup and another Spider-Woman on a bike arrives to help. Together, they charged at Vulture, who manages to fly outside. Vulture attacked the chopper, which sent it crashing toward them. Gwen saw her father and the civilians in the way, so she quickly sprang to action. She created a massive web to catch and cushion the chopper's fall, while they used their strength to slowly lower it down, giving people enough time to move out of the way. With the fighting done and everyone saved, Gwen tries to catch her breath when her father sneaks up from behind and holds her at gunpoint. She is forced to surrender and reveals herself before the police captain. Shocked to discover his daughter is the Spider-Woman, Captain Stacy upholds justice and tries to bring her in. She tries to reason with him, but when words aren't enough, Miguel traps her father in a spider web and invites Gwen to join his team. Back in Brooklyn, Miles Morales has been Spider-Man for a year now. A new villain has shown up named Spot, who tried to rob a convenience store with the usual ability to open wormholes. When he tried to steal an ATM, Miles showed up to stop him. He struggled to defeat him because of his peculiar ability. Miles gets easily distracted when his father keeps texting, given that he has an appointment with a career officer. With no time to lose, he quickly ties a body part to every wormhole Spot creates, holding him in place. He then rushes to his dorm and finally arrives for his appointment, albeit late. When the career officer reviews his grades, his mom reacts when Miles gets a B in Spanish, given that he is half Spanish. Miles explains that his grade is low because he missed a few classes. When asked how often he skipped classes, the career officer informs them that he skipped 6 classes in the past year. The career officer tells them they can still salvage the situation. When her mother learns that Miles wants to study in New Jersey, she objects, claiming it is too far. Miles explains that Princeton has the best quantum researchers in the country and believes that studying there will help him figure out how to travel to other dimensions. Suddenly, Miles notices Spot broke free, so he makes an excuse and walks out on them. Miles quickly runs out to confront Spot. Their fighting sends them across town while Miles' father chases after them. Spot gets furious when Miles calls him the villain of the week. When Miles' father tried to pull Spot's leg, he got pulled into a wormhole with Miles and Spot, where they all end up at Alchemax. Spot claims that he created Miles to become Spider-Man while Miles made him into Spot. He explains that he used to work for Alchemax, who worked on the collider that brought a spider from another dimension. Earth 42. The spider bit him and gave him spider powers. Spot claims he was in the collider when Miles blew it up and became what he is now. Because of that incident, he lost his job, life, and even his face. Spot charges at Miles in a fit of rage when he accidentally kicks himself in the butt and falls onto his own wormhole. Spot drops into his wormhole and finds himself in an unfamiliar space. When he peeks through one of the wormholes, he discovers that he can travel to any dimension and realizes he has the power of the multiverse. Meanwhile, Peter Parker of Earth 13122 witnessed when Spot peeped through to his dimension and reported an anomaly to Miguel. Miles hurries back home with the cake for his father's celebration of getting promoted to captain. He tried to get home quickly, but kept running into villains. He was so late for the party that he missed his father's toast. His parents noticed he had been distracted this past year and demanded an answer. When Miles tried to dismiss the conversation, his parents even became furious that they grounded him. Miles walks out and sulks into his room when Gwen suddenly shows up. She invites him to go outside and explore Brooklyn. Gwen explains what she has been doing for several months and how she joined the Spider Society. Gwen disappears on Miles for a second to place surveillance on Spot's apartment, which is later revealed as her mission. After Gwen leaves, Miles sulks again, looking at the horizon. His mother tells him to go after Gwen, but not before she makes him promise to take care of himself, and that he returns home when he's done. Miles suits up and follows Gwen back to Spot's apartment. He turned himself invisible so that Gwen wouldn't notice him. Gwen uses a device to replay what happened at the apartment. It turns out that Spot has recreated a miniaturized version of the collider to generate more spots so he can travel to other dimensions. Jess checks in on Gwen and gets furious when she discovers that Gwen met with Miles instead of focusing on her mission. Lila tracks down Spot, who can now make portals to jump to any dimension he wants. Lila tracked down Spot's last known location back to Moonbottom, where Jess sends Gwen after him with the local Spider-Man in that dimension. Miles follows Gwen through the wormhole. When Gwen corners Spot, she gets distracted when Miles shows up and Spot escapes. Joining them is Praviter Pravakar, the local Spider-Man of this dimension. Although they outnumbered him 3-1, they still struggled to contain Spot, who had reached Alchemax. Once inside, Spot creates a barrier to keep the others away while he completes the collider sequence. Miles tries to use his electric powers and absorb them, but when it takes longer, Hobie shows up and breaks the barrier. Spot heads towards the collider sequence and finally absorbs its energy to complete itself. Spot disappears, but not before claiming he will take everything away from Miles, just like how he took everything away from him. The whole building starts to collapse and they quickly run outside. A part of the building falls, to which Miles and the others jump below to save civilians about to be crushed. The bridge breaks and Prav finds Gayatri, Prav's love interest in this dimension, trapped in the bus about to fall. Miles also witnesses Inspector Singh trying to save a child, so he jumps off to save him. Although they manage to save everyone, something worse appears, as they see a quantum hole at the bottom of the city. Suddenly, Jess and a few other spiders arrive at the scene, trying to contain the situation. Gwen and the others were summoned back to headquarters. Miles and the others return to HQ in Nueva York of Earth 928. Miles was thrilled to find numerous alternate versions of Spider-Man when they arrived. When they come to a room with people behind glass chambers, Gwen explains they are anomalies, people who wound up in a different dimension. They then use the Go Home machine, which uses the subject's DNA to detect which dimension it is from and sends it back to where it belongs. Miles finally meets Miguel, the leader of the Spider Society. Miguel immediately goes ballistic on Miles, furious at blowing another hole in the multiverse. Peter Parker, who was previously acquainted with Miles, shows up with a baby and tries to calm Miguel. Miguel tells Miles that he disrupted a canon event. He explains that canon events are chapters always part of every Spider story. He describes them as the connection that binds all of them together in the web of the Spider-Verse. Anomalies can disrupt connections, which makes them very dangerous. Miguel tells him that Inspector Singh's death was a canon event. He wasn't supposed to be there, and he wasn't supposed to save him. Because Miles changed the story, Prav's dimension is unraveling. To help make Miles understand, Miguel claims that he once broke a canon event too. He found a world where he had a family. His version of that dimension was killed, and he decided to replace them. At the time, he thought it was harmless until the day the whole dimension unraveled and everyone died. If they break enough canons and save enough captains, they could all lose everything when the entire network of the Spider-Verse collapses. Miles later realizes that his father is about to become captain, which Miguel confirms is another canon event. He asks Miguel to send him home, but he refuses. Peter tried to explain to Miles that if not for Uncle Ben dying, most of the spiders would not be here, and all the good they have done would have been for naught. Miles still can't accept letting someone die so the world can be saved. Other spiders surround him, trying to convince him, even Penny Parker showing up. When Miles doesn't back down, Miguel traps him in a crystal web. Miles uses his powers to break free from the trap and escape. Hobie uses this chance to quit the Spider Society while the rest chase after Miles. He had a lot of close calls, but Miles managed to get ahead of everyone. Miles runs towards a bullet train headed for the sky. During their fighting, Miguel slips up and reveals to Miles that he is the original anomaly. The spider that bit him wasn't from his dimension and was never supposed to bite him. He explains that there's a world out there without Spider-Man protecting them because it bit him instead. Miguel claims that if he hadn't been bit, Peter Parker in his dimension would have lived, but instead he died to save him. Peter slips up when he tells Miguel to stop, as this was not what they discussed. When Miguel claims he doesn't know what he is doing, Miles taunts him by saying that he did lure out all the spiders away from HQ. Miles then kicks Miguel and flies toward HQ. Miles sneaks back into HQ and uses invisibility to activate all the computers simultaneously. With Spider-Bite busy, Miles sneaks inside and uses the go-home machine to return to his dimension. Miguel arrives and tries to break through the shield before it fully activates, but it is too late. Miguel is furious and blames it on Gwen. He banned her from the Spider Society and returned Gwen to her dimension without a watch, but only after she told them they were supposed to be the good guys. Miguel then leads the others to stop Miles from breaking another canon event. Miles returns home to where his mom awaited and finally told her he was Spider-Man. He thought it was time to prepare them for what was to come. His mother doesn't seem to understand what he's talking about when he later realizes he was thrown into the wrong universe. He was thrown into Earth 42, from which the spider that bit him came and where there is no Spider-Man in this world. In this world, his Uncle Aaron is alive, and when he took him to the roof, he got knocked out by a masked assailant. It was later revealed that the Miles in this dimension was the Prowler. Meanwhile, Gwen returns to her world. She returns home to find her father asleep in front of the TV. When she was about to leave, her father woke up and tried to talk to her. Gwen tells her father he's a good cop who wears the badge so someone wouldn't have to. She tried to explain that her mask was her badge, and all she wanted to do was try to be good. When Gwen taunts him to arrest her, her father claims he can't, as he quits. He claims being a cop no longer matters and that she was the best thing he ever did. Although unsure of what it does, her father gives her something that Hobie left over for her. It turns out to be a watch that lets her travel dimensions. When she returned to Earth 1610, she realizes that Miles was thrown into a different universe. She then confronts his parents and promises to bring Miles back. Gwen immediately gathered her friends, intent on saving Miles and possibly fighting the Spider Society. Meanwhile, Spot arrived in Brooklyn, intent on killing Miles' father. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Please check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. We'll see you next time.